Welcome back to Gooner Fanzine TV. Very, very pleased and honoured to have an old mate of mine and a really, really good guy and a superb broadcaster on the show tonight, Johnny Phillips. How you doing, Johnny?
I'm good. It's great to see you after such a long time. But as you say, we go back quite a way, and it's great to come here tonight.
Absolutely. I think the last time we had a beer was Arsenal Wolves last season.
It was up at the Emirates, and it was a great result for Wolves that day. I don't know about how Arsenal fans saw it, but it was a great day for us. First year back in the Premier League, and we got a point at the Emirates.
Absolutely. I mean, Wolves have been doing so well over the last couple of years, haven't they? Really?
Yeah, it's an amazing story. What's happened at Wolves? They've just finally kicked off. For so long, they've just not really been doing a lot. I mean, kicking around in the Championship and even lower down, and now they've had this amazing sort of resurgence, backed by Chinese money. It has to be said. Everything these days relates to the money, but it's great to see them back. You know what they're doing.
Absolutely, and for you guys who may not know, obviously Johnny's an absolute broadcasting legend, really good guy, as I say.
Too kind. I wouldn't go that far.
No, the check's in the post, mate. But in case you don't know, Johnny is a massive, massive Wolves fan. He's obviously, it's a bit like me, sort of when you're in the press box and when you're broadcasting, you're completely professional, completely neutral, but John's a huge, huge Wolves fan, so we've got him on the show, obviously to preview Arsenal Wolves and to talk about his new book as well, Bitten By Wolves, which we'll sort of go into in a minute. But you've obviously had experience of covering a lot of games and watching a lot of games. You saying like you sort of saw Arsenal in the early 90s as well?
Yeah,
just
I mean,
a punter.
It's not just I'm from Liverpool originally, but it was sort of right at the start of the 90s. A family friend moved from down south, moved up to Liverpool. He got a teaching job there, and he used to take me along to matches. So the Arsenal side that I got to know really well was that the year after they won the league at Anfield, and then a couple of years after that, I was down at, I shouldn't really mention it, but I was down at Wembley for that famous semi-final against Spurs. But then there were loads of northern games we went to. We went to Liverpool away. I think it was a 1-0 win, and either Wright or Merson scored. I can't remember, in about 1991-ish. Yeah, nice. I remember standing on a terrace at Boundary Park at Oldham once, singing "We All Live in a Perry Groves World." So I did like that early 90s Arsenal team. I mean, it's an iconic team, isn't it? And obviously, there's been the '89 film and all the rest of it. But I did get, I was still at school in those days, and I did get a bit of an Arsenal fix at a young age.
Absolutely. I love hearing that, to be fair. Like, the fact Johnny Phillips was sort of watching the Arsenal as a punter. But obviously, you are a huge Wolves fan. You write for the Wolverhampton newspaper.
Yeah, the Express and Star at Wolverhampton. I do a weekend column on a Saturday for them. I mean, it's as I said, I'm from Liverpool, but it's a sort of hereditary problem. It's my dad who's the Wolves fan. So growing up as a kid in the 80s and early 90s, I really should have gone for Liverpool or Everton, but I just ended up going to the match with him, and I got hooked on Wolves. Steve Bull was my hero as a kid, watching him in the old 3rd and 4th division, and it stayed with me ever since. And then you go into broadcasting, you go into your career, and you go and watch all sorts of teams. And for a few years, I kept it quiet. I was a Wolves fan. You're not really supposed to go big, but then as time's gone on, I've sort of become a bit of a fanboy again with Wolves, and leading up to writing the book. But yeah, Wolves through and through.
So when you sort of touched on Steve Bull there, there's a really good story. Obviously, every Arsenal fan knows May the 26th, 1989, the night Arsenal won at Anfield. But there was a match the day after, wasn't there?
That's right. That amazing game at Anfield basically got Steve Bull a place at the World Cup at Italia 90, because what happened was the game was rearranged because of Hillsborough, of course, and all the Arsenal and Liverpool players who would have been available for England, Paul Merson, Alan Smith, John Barnes, Peter Beardsley, couldn't play in the following day's England game. I don't know if you remember, there used to be something called the Rouse Cup back in the day. England-Scotland at the end of the season, and Scotland were playing England at Hampden Park. Bully had just been on an England under-21 trip, and he got the phone call saying, "Can you come up to Scotland with Shaw's?" I think there'd been an injury in the week, maybe to John Fashanu or someone, and they were really down to bare bones. So players like Tony Cottee, Nigel Clough just coming to the side, not proven England players. And Bully got the call up. He got in for the England-Scotland game, came on as a sub for Fashanu, got a reoccurrence of his injury rather. Got on, scored for England on his debut as a 3rd division player, and that set his career in motion. And then it became a big battle between Smudger and Stevie Bull, who got on the plane for Italia 90.
I mean, we were sort of saying it a minute ago, just the fact, imagine these days if a striker from the 3rd tier sort of took over or usurped the place of a Premier League star who had won the league.
Incredible. It was incredible. He actually tells a good story, because I do quite a bit of work with Bully now, and he tells a great story about how he got the the phone call when he was on England under 21 duty, saying, right, they're going to fly you back to England, pick up a bag of stuff and go straight up to Scotland. And all the England team, Bobby Robson's England team, was staying at Troon, at Royal Troon, where the hotel was, in preparation for this game at Hampden Park. And he got in and he got there and they gave him a bag of England kit and a load of sponsored gear. And he absolutely couldn't believe his luck because he'd literally been used to, virtually paying for his own training kit at Wolves. Wolves were in absolute shambles at the time, no money whatsoever. And he got there and he had all this gear and he just ransacked all the gear, took it all back down to England with him after the game, and it was great for him on 2 levels. He scored and he got a load of free training gear. Absolutely.
I mean, you sort of talk about Wolves there, and there's a brilliant bit in your book, Bitten By Wolves. I'm sort of reading it, just about the fact someone sort of come up to you and they, to Matt Murray, I should say, basically saying, who's he play for then? Oh, Wolves. And one of the lads goes, it's only Wolves. And the other lad goes, actually, Wolves are a big club.
Yeah.
Wolves have got a massive history, haven't they?
They have got a great history. And for too long, it was a history. But Matt Murray, who's a top lad, and he's sort of classic Wolves in a way. He sums up the Wolves story in that he's had a career of real highs and real lows. He had to retire really early, and never fulfilled a potential England career, and that's the Wolves story through and through. We've had these incredible highs in the 50s of winning championships, playing in pioneers of European football, and then we've been bankrupt twice and been kicking around the 4th division. Wolves has got a history, but there's something about the club that it's never only Wolves. It's got a real character to it, and it's got a real identity. And even through all the bad times, Matt made the point, he goes on holiday and he always sees a Wolves top somewhere, and that was always the way. Even when they weren't doing much, you'd always see a Wolves top about. It is a club that captures the imagination. They have been, in the doldrums for far too long, but they are finally getting there. And they finally look to be back at a decent place.
Absolutely. I mean, for what it's worth, when I used to follow England away in the sort of 90s and early 2000s, you'd always see Wolves fans there. No matter where you go in the world, you come across Wolves fans. And obviously going back to the 80s as well, there was a lot of issues with Wolves going bankrupt. But the 88 Sherpa Van Trophy, there was 88,000 at Wembley,
incredible,
wasn't there, against Burnley?
A 4th division Wembley game, and there were over 80,000 there. And Burnley had just come back from the brink as well. Yeah. I think the year before, they beat Leyton Orient on the last day of the season to stay up, and avoid going out of business. And Wolves again had been in the 4th division for a couple of years. I think maybe the second year it was that 87-88 season, and the idea of 50,000 fans, and it's still a record. No 2 clubs from the lowest division have ever got that many. I think last year Sunderland and Portsmouth took a load, but they were a league above. But it's probably similar for them as well. It's 2 clubs with a real history that finally have a sniff of success after so many bad times. And that Sherpa Van Trophy final, I think, is one of the most significant days in the club's history because, we've won 4 FA Cups, a couple of League Cups and 3 championships. But anyone of my era and older speaks about that Sherpa Van Trophy final as it's all right, we're going to be all right, we're back here. If we can get, they say there was 50,000 Wolves, 30,000 Burnley, whatever it was. They thought if we can get that many to Wembley, we'll be all right, and we were all right, and we never looked back. And I think fans of my generation hold the lads of the 4th division in real high esteem. And we couldn't be thankful enough for what they did for the club. We went very often. Not a lot of people wanted to play for Wolves in those days. When they sunk through the divisions, it was a poor club run by. We were run by the Batty brothers, who were these sort of absentee owners who never showed their face, and they got run out of town in the end. But it didn't have a lot going for it. And then Graham Turner and Steve Bull on the pitch led us back. Even though it's the bottom division, they were great times. Great times.
Absolutely. I mean, you talked about records there. We were sort of having a bit of a chat off air. There's a record that really tickles me with Wolves fans in terms of when you played Newcastle. You were saying on was it New Year's Day 1990?
New Year's Day 1990. Yeah. So it's the 30th anniversary this year. We played Newcastle last weekend, and I did a chapter in my book about what is to this day the greatest ever away day in English football history. Now, I'm sure there've been some great away trips abroad, and thousands of fans go and watch their team abroad in European Cup finals, as your fans did when you were in the European Cup final. But for an English domestic fixture on New Year's Day, We took 8 planes up to Newcastle from Birmingham Airport. We flew almost 1,000 fans up. On planes alone, another 2,000 drove up there for this 1990 New Year's Day fixture away at Newcastle in the 2nd Division. And it all happened when a group of businessmen approached the official supporters club and said, listen, excuse me, we don't fancy driving up to Newcastle after a night on the pop.
Yeah. Is
there any chance, do you think, of a plane could be organised? And the initial idea was that maybe the supporters club could get, I don't know, a 25, 30 seater plane up. And word got out, and more fans thought, this is a good idea, And they got Monarch Airlines on board. And the official supporters club chartered 6 Monarch Airlines, and it actually got to the point where the people at the top brass at Monarch Airlines didn't believe what was happening when it kept getting chartered, and they actually knocked on the house of the a lovely old couple called Muriel and Albert Bates ran the official Wolves supporters club, and they got a knock on the door one day from these Monarch Airlines representatives, and they said, excuse me sir, we get requests to charter our airlines all the time, and maybe 1 in 100, 1 in 200 come off. You've just then chartered our entire fleet to go to a football match. Can we see some evidence of this? And sure enough, they had to produce evidence that all these fans wanted to go. And in the end, they all flew up to Newcastle, New Year's Day 1990. And we won 4-1. Steve Bull scored all 4 goals. Bobby Robson was watching in the stands, and he eventually got on the plane to Italy. It was a great day. That I never went. I was absolutely devastated. I couldn't go. But every Wolves fan you meet who went that day says it was just the greatest away day in history.
Oh mate, I love that. That's
and they were singing.
Fantastic.
They were on the plane singing "Going Up, Going Up" before takeoff. that sort of nonsense. All that sort of.
I love all that. That's
it's great. It's great. Away days they are the best, though, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
You have your days at your home ground, and your home ground's your home ground. But I do think an away day when everything comes together is just the best day ever.
They really are. They're absolutely the best days. But when talking about sort of Arsenal Wolves, Wolves have had a great couple of years. As I say, last time we had a beer was last season at the Emirates.
Right.
After a very good performance from Wolves to earn a 1-1 draw. Arguably they should have won the game, to be fair. What's your take on Wolves this season? Because they've not been at those heights, have they?
No, they've absolutely struggled to hit those heights again. I mean, the Europa League's killed us a bit. Our season started towards the end of July, and we were having qualifying fixtures away in Armenia, amongst others. And they also did a pre-season tour to China for 10 days before that. So they had a lot of miles in the tank, a lot of travelling. They didn't really have a proper pre-season. And Nuno Espirito Santo likes to work with a really small squad. So when they went to China and for the Europa League games, he took a lot of the under-23s and the under-18s. There was a 16, 17-year-old kid on the Chinese trip because he wants to work with a really small squad at an intensive level of training. So by the time it got to the league season, they'd just had a lot of miles in the tank already, and they really struggled early on in the league. They got their act together more recently, but obviously they're still on these big away trips. They're in Turkey last week, and it just, you know what it's like. It takes it out of you. Thursday, Sunday football's horrible, and there's no sort of uniformity. I mean, I know there isn't with television these days anyway, but there's sort of no uniformity to the kickoff times. There'll be either 5:55 or 8 p.m. on the Thursday night, and then it could be a 2 p.m. or 4:30 on the Sunday, whereas most of last season it was nothing in midweek and a 3 o'clock on a Saturday with the odd game moved for telly. And it does make a ridiculous difference. At the elite level of sport we're at, the Premier League, such an elite level of sport, and every single bit makes a difference. Those extra miles, the extra games, it does take it out of you. And they've struggled. They played Newcastle on Sunday, who'd not played for 8 days, and then Newcastle put in a decent performance at Chelsea. I saw it. I was working at that game the week before. They have 8 days to prepare for a team that's gone to Turkey and back. So that's why they've struggled. But they're okay. They're doing okay. How's
Conor Cody doing? I was very, very impressed with him last season.
Yeah, he was brilliant last season, and he's had a few blips this season. Tammy Abraham gave him the run around at home to Chelsea a few weeks ago, and I think Chelsea won 5-2, and he really got the run around that day. If you go at Cody on a one-on-one basis, his pace finds him out. He's very much a sweeper in a 3. Okay. He couldn't be a defender in a back 4. His distribution's brilliant. His organising is brilliant. One-on-one, you can get at him, and whether or not that's the way Arsenal go for it on at the weekend. I don't know, but if you isolate Cody, you've got a very good chance against him. The beauty of the way they're playing with the three at the back is that he's rarely been isolated, and it's been too high. Bolly and Bennett, as a rule, have been a little bit higher up, and he's been sat deeper, so it's hard to isolate Cody. But if you do, he is in trouble. He's not quite had the season he had last season, but he's a brilliant captain. He's a great leader. A team, we've never had a more disparate team of individuals in terms of from all these different nationalities all around the world, and he's the glue, and he's the only big talker on the pitch. So I couldn't speak highly enough of him.
Fair play.
Yeah.
I think you're absolutely. I was sort of looking into Wolves a little bit, and they're real adherents to three at the back, aren't they? Really?
Yeah, I mean, it's always been sort of Nuno's way. When he was at Valencia, he went with three at the back, and he's a goalie, and so he watched all his football from the goal, and then when he wasn't playing in goal, he was on the bench because he was a substitute keeper for most of his career under these great managers, including Jose Mourinho. So he was always a tactician. When he got picked, he was in goal, looking at the way a pitch is in front of you, seeing the whole game in front of you. And when he wasn't being picked, he was listening to coaches. And now he does a lot of his analysis with the big high behind camera, the big camera from high behind. He prefers to analyse games like that. And if you watch Wolves from behind, it's fascinating because it's almost like they're on a string. The three, the wing backs, the way they move around the pitch, they're almost like they're attached together. And the three's really important to him. And the shape, everything's about the shape. Everything is about the shape. Within the shape, they adapt and they have little changes. Occasionally, they've gone two up top, which they're doing at the moment, and sometimes it's been one with two either side. But the shape's based on the three. Yeah.
So it's almost like 3-5-2 at the time.
Yeah, 3-5-2 at the moment, but it has been 3-4-3. But at the current team, and the wing backs are very much wingers. So you get He'll change them around. So you'll have Adama Traore, for example, has played wing back this season, and then you've had someone far more defensively like Matt Doherty and Johnny are the usual two. But then he's not afraid to try someone else at wing back. They are wingers. They really do hug the touchline. It's incredible.
Yeah, absolutely. How's Martino been playing? And there's a couple of others. As well.
I mean, I love Martino. He's had a solid season without anything spectacular, but in all my time watching them, I've never seen a player like him. He's the neatest, tidiest, just incredible player I've ever seen. The ball sticks to him. He never wastes it. He protects it. He treasures the ball. Every pass is a meaningful pass. He doesn't give possession away. He's just such a gifted footballer. How he's not come to England before he did. I know Everton were close a few years ago, and Tottenham actually were really close to getting him. And then we got him at the age of 32 for £5 million. I mean, and it was just, I remember that we got him. I think Middlesbrough signed Paddy McNair from Sunderland for the same amount of money. I mean, I'm not slagging Paddy McNair off rather, but it was just such a bargain. And he was incredible last season. For me, he's the best player I've ever seen at Wolves. He's just, just such a joy to watch. And he's never untidy. He's great to watch. And he's such a good player, and a lot of the young players off the pitch really take their lead from him. He's a great trainer, a real role model.
Absolutely. And what about Jota as well? He caught my eye last season.
Yeah, Jota has had a quieter season this season because he's had a few injury problems, but he's a great runner with the ball, a traditional dribbler. Like back in the day, there's no dribblers sort of nowadays, but he's one of those that likes to dribble and he'll take players on. Was it the Arsenal game last season? He had a particularly good game, I think. I'm trying to remember at our place.
You
I think he did really well. I think he loves running at players, and if you can get him running at players, and he's very brave as well. He's not afraid to take a hit. In our Championship winning season, he got a lot of rough treatment, less so going into the Premier League. But he loves a one-on-one duel. Jota. He's been quieter this season. I think he has had his injury problems, and he's not quite got over them. But he started to get a good partnership going with Raul Jimenez towards the end of last season as well. And those two were great as a two. And it's nice to see a two every now and then, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
absolutely.
Absolutely.
Just in terms of the Wolves sort of angle for Saturday.
Yeah.
What's the take on Arsenal? What's the take on the feeling on Saturday's game? Because it's a 3:00 game on a Saturday.
I know they're rare, aren't they? It's great to have it. They probably feel. Do you know what? They probably feel they've got a big chance. They've got a big derby against Aston Villa in midweek in the League Cup. Be interesting to see. who he picks for that. I'd be very surprised if he plays a strong team at all in that. I don't think the League Cup is a priority. I think the Europa League is a priority, and he want to go as far as he can in that. With the League Cup, I'm not so sure. And that means they'll be relatively fresh going into Saturday. Your League Cup game is slightly bigger and might take a bit more out of you. I don't know. You look at Arsenal, and you think you can get at them. And it's perhaps, is that a sad indictment of the club they've become? I just look at Arsenal and think I think it's probably going to be Arsenal the favourites. It's going to be an Arsenal win probably, but you don't go there thinking, oh, let's shut up shop and hope for the best. You go there thinking, yeah, you can get at Arsenal. That's just the team they seem to, looking from afar, it's the team they seem to be at the moment. They take one step forward and then it's a couple back. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've got to put you on the spot. It was a really dramatic day at the end. Yeah, it was.
Gooner Fanzine was there. Gooner Fanzine TV was there. As a broadcaster, what was your take on the whole sort of day, if I can ask?
It was interesting, I think there's nothing worse than when a crowd turns, you're in trouble. And I think back, there's been a few moments in my time supporting Wolves when they turn. I remember we turned on Graham Taylor once in the mid-90s when things were going badly. And then under Mark McGee a few years after that. And you feel a bit sick in the pit. You think, God, this is bad now. It's a long way back. So you think, right, there needs to be change. And that's a drawn-out, laborious process where you're almost throwing the season away if you're going to make change. But when a crowd turns and when they pick on an individual and when the individual responds in the way Granit Xhaka did, you just think, you look at it and just think that's not good. And I do think it's a long way back for Arsenal from that. What do they do? Do they think the team's clearly not performing the way it should be? So you still need wholesale changes. Are they going to look at the manager and think, I don't know, you know better than me, but again, if they're going to make change, that's disruptive. You're throwing away another season and you're starting again. If they don't make change, it's a long way back from what happened on Sunday, and then things start to drag on. I remember Liverpool under Hodgson when it went really, really sad, and it's nowhere near as bad as that. You still got quality and you're still turning out quality performances. But I remember the Liverpool crowd, who were famous for being, this great Anfield crowd, and they weren't when Hodgson was there. They were just like any other crowd. When things were bad, they showed it. I think when an atmosphere goes in a home team stadium, it's horrible. And I think as a away team, you're just loving it. And I imagine Palace was thinking, just wanting the game to go on and on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
It was extraordinary because, you almost felt like it was sort of a pressure point had got off. Whereas apathy's bad, and when fans sort of go, that's bad. But when it went like it did, it was like, I don't know. I mean, you tell me. Has it been a long time coming?
It's. I think there's a lot of frustration building up. It has been a long time coming in terms of the sort of late Wenger era, and we want to see progress.
Yes.
And it just hasn't really happened in the respect of getting a new manager in to take us forward, because he hasn't done that.
No.
It was a strange decision to obviously appoint Granit Xhaka as captain. A lot of people think that. We certainly think that as well. And it was just.
It doesn't inspire rather from afar. You look from afar, and I talk about our own captain, Conor Cody.
Yeah.
You walk out onto the pitch with him leading them onto the pitch, and you're happy he's leading them.
Absolutely.
And you think, no matter what happens, we won't fail for the want of trying, and it won't be for this. And you do look at the current Arsenal setup, and you think, it does lack leadership. It definitely lacks leadership. And going back to the first team, Arsenal team I watched, full of leaders and full of strong characters, and also the connect between supporters and players. And I watched Arsenal as a neutral in that in 1990-91, and you can just see the love on the terraces for the players, and the peripheral players like Perry Groves, for example, but certainly for the big players and everything. And then you look at that Arsenal team now, and you just don't really see a lot of love. And you're thinking, I always think it's up to the players first to give you something to love. I don't think fans should have to fall in love with the team or a bunch of players. And I think probably the Arsenal team is a hard team to love at the moment.
Yeah. I mean, for what it's worth, I think you're absolutely right, and there's a massive disconnect there. And I'm not sure how Arsenal go forward in terms of what they're going to do. But on a lighter note,
Yeah,
let's talk about the book, because we can
go
talk
on.
about Arsenal all day. And,
No, it's fine.
I want to get you on the book. So I've had a look through it, and it's a brilliant book. You wrote a book a couple of years ago, or a few years ago. We sort of that was a really good book as well. But just talk us through it. So you talk about the book. There's a really, really brilliant sort of opening when you're sort of talking about you obviously been a Merseysider. You go to Tranmere to watch Wolves for a family friend, like you say. And talk us through that.
Well, I mean, the first time I went to watch Wolves was 1983, so that's really giving my age away now. And it was living in Liverpool. I couldn't get down to Wolverhampton much, and it was. In fairness, it wasn't a good time to go watch football as a kid. There was a lot of trouble at a lot of grounds. So my dad was very reticent to take me anywhere with Wolves. But we had Tranmere Rovers away in January 1983. So we got tickets for the main stand, not in the Wolves end, because that was an away terrace. And he didn't want to expose me to away fans. I was like, I was in a junior school kid in shorts. He's like, not having that. So I remember we got the train from Liverpool over to the Wirral. Rock Ferry train station is the Tranmere train station. And I remember vividly, to this day, getting off the train, and as we got off the little stopper train from Liverpool, a British Rail football special pulled in and just disgorged just hundreds and hundreds of rowdy Wolves fans, all singing their hearts out, probably tanked up as well. They probably made a bit of a mess of the football special, and I was just wow. You know what it's like as a kid, everything's bigger, isn't it? Everything just seems so big, and I just remember thinking, this is unbelievable. And then I was obviously hooked from that minute on. And I also think, that's when I was hooked on Wolves, and then I followed them through the dark days, and then we progressed up the leagues, didn't do a lot in the Championship, and stayed in the Championship for years and years and years. Always, you have your club, you love your club. I always think every fan's got a book in them. You yourself, you've written books, every fan has got a book in them. And I thought, about a year ago, and with my job, I got to meet so many great ex-players, great supporters, and people with stories to tell. And I thought, now Wolves have got back to this level and they look like they're flying. I thought, why not write a book about Wolves and the interesting people I've met, supporters, staff, players, whoever it may be, and do it over the course of Wolves' first year back in the top flight. And luckily we finished 7th and we had our best season in 40 years. And while that season was going on, I was just meeting up. Steve Bull, me and him do a few theatre dates in the Midlands where we do tales from his playing days. So there's obviously a chapter on Steve Bull, who's my hero. But there's a couple of other chapters in there that I think would appeal to any fan. There's one with the club's longest serving landlady. And she basically was working in the ticket office, and the old academy manager back in the early 90s said, anyone fancy taking players in? We need these youth players. And she's been doing it for 20 years, and she's had 40 odd kids through living with her, and the dedication of her and all that. So it's basically, it's called Bitten By Wolves, Stories from the Soul of Molineux. And I've tried to get to the heart of what it means to support Wolves, play for Wolves, work at Wolves, and why it's a special club. And it was all written with this background of a season going on, and there's a bit with the current players and current staff as well. But I want it to be a sort of more of a holistic look at what Wolves are about as a club. And there are stories that I interviewed we've got a secretary who served the club for 20 years as club secretary, and he had some hilarious stories about players they thought they'd signed walking into the training ground, and answered a phone call and went straight off down the road, and things like that. Just there's quite a lot behind the scenes about what happens at a football club as well.
Absolutely, and having read it, it's obviously for Wolves fans, but it's for football fans in general. I love reading and look through.
Well, it's very kind of you to say that.
Mate, honestly, there's a real love there as well.
I hope it comes through. But you know what it's like yourself when you write a book about your team. You try and do it as dispassionately as possible, but
love comes through. Absolutely. So tell us what's on the sort of record for the book ahead of Christmas? You got any book signings or sort of?
Yeah, so down at Waterstones in Wolverhampton, I'm doing a bit with them. Club Shop have kindly stocked it as well, so I'm going in there as well to sign a few copies, which is brilliant. I'm going on TalkSport in a couple of weeks' time to Hawksby and Jacobs do some great stuff around football books, so it'd be nice to chat to them as well. And I've got a couple of other. I do quite a lot of ex-player nights down in Wolverhampton, up in Wolverhampton, I should say. We've got one with Steve Froggatt and Tony Daly coming up in a few weeks' time about the 90s Nearly Men. And Steve Froggatt was in my book. He was one of Graham Taylor's big signings in the mid-90s when Wolves had this big splurge of cash under Sir Jack Hayward. he signed Steve Froggatt and Tony Daly for big money back then, and they immediately got injured, and they never fulfilled their promise. And Graham Taylor ended up getting sacked, and that was another of our nearly periods in our history. And through doing so many nights in Wolverhampton with ex-players and stuff, you get to meet fans and loads of people connected with the club. And Wolverhampton as well. It's quite a humble city. It's a small city. It's not well off by any stretch. It's struggled in the post-industrial times, and the club is incredibly important to the place. When the club does well, it has a feel-good place. And having been watching them when the club was going bankrupt in the 4th division, when it was the embarrassment of the city, it's great now to see the club giving the city a bit of a lift, and they're really proud in Wolverhampton of what's happening with their team at the moment. And rightly so, because it's been a long time coming.
Yeah, absolutely. As an Arsenal fan who's been up to Molineux over the years, it's you can just see there's a real connect between the fans.
There is now.
The club as well.
You haven't walked through the subway, have you?
I have. I managed to get away through this. So, I was a bit worried at one stage, but that's a completely different story.
Quite. The subway's a lot friendlier than it was.
Is it? Oh, thank God for that.
The University of Wolverhampton and the council have got together, and they've done a big mural inside. So you're not going to be done with knuckle dusters down the subway anymore. It's all right.
You can write a book on that.
Well, that's a different story, isn't it?
Johnny Phillips, honestly, it's been an absolute pleasure.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Mate,
really
honestly,
thank you.
Like I say, buy the book, Bitten By Wolves, and Waterstones, and all good bookshops as well. Read it. You don't have to be a Wolves fan to read it, to buy it. It's a brilliant book. And Johnny, honestly, thanks for your time,
Thanks
mate.
for having me on.
Huge respect.
Really appreciate it. Cheers.
Nice one.